Okay, you ready to get to our first call?
Yes, please.
So this caller is coming in from Kansas, from Paranormal Analytical. The topic is about his first experience in church. So we've got Rick from Kansas. You are on with Ethan and Alice. How are you doing?
Ethan and Alice, how are you guys doing tonight?
Good. How about yourself?
I'm doing good. Thank you for having me on. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely. Thanks for taking the time to call. So, what did you want to talk about?
Oh, tonight I was talking with some other people, and we were asked to talk about our first experience in the paranormal. And my first experience in the paranormal, so to speak, was in the church that I was attending when I was 9 years old.
Okay. What happened?
Well, I was raised in a very, very religious church at that time, and they had what was called deliverance services and healing services. These were held twice a month, and whenever these services were held, the public was basically asked to come in and have the church pray for them for whatever reason it might be. And that particular night, I do distinctly remember this gentleman walking in and sitting down to the right side of where we were sitting. And as time went on, the pastor went ahead and asked if there was anybody that wanted to be prayed for, and he got up and went forward. I mean, it was just a normal prayer service at that time.
Okay.
And he spoke with the gentleman for a while, and all at once he made a motion for the deacons of the church to come join him up in front. At which time they began to pray very, very earnestly over this man. And I know there's probably others that have been a part of these kind of services or been a part of the Protestant religion that believes in deliverance and things like that. And they started really, really, really getting into this prayer. The atmosphere in the church just basically turned on a dime.
Sorry,
and you could feel kind of like in a excuse me?
Could you repeat that? You said something turned on a dime.
Oh, the atmosphere in the church.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
When you say it turned, what do you mean? Like, how did it change?
Like a blanket being tossed over. It was heaviness. It was very heavy. I didn't know at that time what that meant. I just know that I felt it, and so did the others in the church. And at that time, after they started praying really earnestly with him, I started hearing from the front of the church kind of like a low guttural growl coming from this gentleman. And as they prayed more and more, the more distinct that guttural growl become. And it was intense. To say the least, it was very intense as far as what was being felt, what I was seeing. And all at once, they were almost like reaching a crescendo of what was going on in the church with the prayer. And this gentleman that was being prayed for threw his head back, and all at once, everyone, including myself, could see a black mist come from that gentleman and dissipate into the church. And it was something that, like I said, I will never, ever forget. Almost instantaneously, as it went throughout the church, you felt an even heavier presence of oppression. And I'm here to tell you, it took everything that I had within me as far as the spirituality to combat and to fight what I was feeling like something was wanting to take over or basically consume my spirit at that time standing in that church. And that is what has, go ahead.
Sorry. So for the record, what do you think it was?
With the years of experience that I've had as far as dealing with the paranormal, quite a few years, I found that generally speaking, anything like this is going to be what's called spiritual oppression. not a possession, but oppression. And once these are dealt with, and once these are basically sought out, so to speak, to be delivered from the individual, they go out into the spiritual realm looking for other manifestations to be a part of, including humans.
Could I ask you, Rick, what the difference is between a spiritual possession and a spiritual oppression, like what you're describing?
Oppression is basically like being bullied. Okay, that's kind of like a good word I like to use, because it is. I mean, you are basically
So like under a demonic
being
attack, but not
hammered.
necessarily possessed.
Yes.
Got it.
Right, exactly. And this is what you feel, as far as it can be one presence, it can be two, it can be whatever, but whatever that presence is, it's strong enough to sit there and spiritually attack you. That is the difference between oppression and basically possession, is when it has thoroughly taken over and thoroughly done its job as basically manifesting in that individual.
Mm-hmm.
This is a tricky one, especially like the black mist. Now, did other people see said black mist, or was this just you?
No, there was other people that saw it too. There was probably, I'm going to say 15 to 16 of us that was in the church, and there was, I'm going to say at least 8 or 9 of them, because the reaction of those that were standing and sitting in the church was quite pronounced, in that you knew they saw what I was saying. And there was some gasping, there was some, like, oh, they just, you knew that they saw what I saw.
When you say you knew they saw what you saw, did you consult with them after? Or you just believe they saw something?
Definitely.
Okay.
No, I talked with probably 6 or 7 of the other members of the church at that time. Remember, I was only 9 years old, and I was basically, at that time when this stuff was happening, there were 2 other people that come over and stood beside me, and actually one of them asked me if I wanted to leave the sanctuary because of the, basically the importance and the overall ambience of what was happening in that church. And I said, no, I want to stay. And they did so. They did allow me to go ahead and stay and be a part of that service.
What are your thoughts on this, Alice?
So my thoughts on this. So Rick, as you're telling your story, I can't help but thinking of a lot of my stories from my childhood. So I grew up in a very charismatic revival, faith healing, demonic deliverance, that all of what you're describing. I was first introduced at 8 years old, so not too far apart from you. And I definitely saw a lot of, I guess what we could call positive phenomena that in my churches was attributed to the Holy Spirit, but we also saw a lot of negative phenomena that would be attributed to the devil and the demonic realm. My churches heavily emphasized spiritual warfare as the ultimate battle between good and evil that played out in us humans. So what I hear, what comes to my mind when I hear you telling your story was, I remember when I was a kid, people in the church would claim to see gold dust falling as though from heaven. Like the room, many people shared the sight of being able to see this gold dust, and other people claim to have their silver tooth cavity fillings turned to gold. And what I'm inclined to think that is now, because for me personally, I never experienced God personally or the demonic realm personally. I just witnessed other people who were undergoing experiences that at the time they called God or the devil. What I've learned in the research that I've done, talking with numerous doctors and therapists, because I desperately needed to piece my framework back together, was that there are, in those types of spiritual settings, there's often an element of hypnosis at play. And when I say hypnosis, I'm not saying like, the guy with the little swinging bell saying, oh, you're feeling sleepy. It's often induced through music, through speech patterns, through repetition of certain words. And when people, I think a lot of churches do this organically without even realizing it's a form of hypnosis. Same thing at a music concert. You know, when you're at a music concert, you just feel a certain energy in the crowd, and the lead singer has such a sway over the crowd. If they say, throw up your hands, you throw up your hands, you know. I think that also can work for... Yes, I think that also translates very often in spiritual settings where people get into a suggestible state where they're a lot more open and vulnerable and just aware of shifts in energy. And a lot of times these shifts in energy, so a lot of people that tend to be drawn to faith healings or demonic deliverance ceremonies tend to have a lot of trauma in their life, like a lot of personal pain and grief that they've never dealt with or didn't deal with thoroughly, that can come up in their bodies. And so that's where you get a lot of demonic symptoms, such as writhing, foaming at the mouth. This topic alone is so huge to get into, but basically what I'm trying to say is that a lot of times our suppressed emotional and psychological trauma can manifest physically in some pretty scary looking scenarios. And collectively, we humans as a species are very good at sharing certain amounts of collective hallucination or that go in line with suggestibility. So I remember one time, like when I was little, I used to think that I was seeing demons. Like I would see like evil looking monkeys, like in shadowy corners, you know, and like as an adult, I was like, what the fuck was that? Because I don't believe in demons anymore, but what was I seeing? And I remember I talked with one therapist in particular who really helped me understand that humans, we're very vulnerable to, we're a visual species, most of us, who have vision, and we like to be able to see and therefore make sense of what we're feeling and witnessing and experiencing around us. So sometimes our minds basically might conjure up a sort of image or like the black dust or the gold dust that was seen in my church to collectively represent our shared experience. It doesn't actually mean it's there. Like, was any gold soot collected that you recall? I don't recall anyone in my churches actually having a little vial of gold dust, and you'd think people would want to take it home with them if it was there.
Right.
That's my personal, that's one of the things that brought me peace. Not to imply that you're looking for peace, and I totally honor if that's your what you experience. And I remember my therapist was very kind to first, because I asked him point blank, I'm like, are demons real? I need to know. And he was like, I want to be very careful how I respond to this because I don't want to invalidate the reality of your experience, is what he said to me. He's like, I believe that you saw things. Do I believe they were actual demons? No. Here's some other alternative explanations for what they could be. Basically, psychologically driven hallucinations to help make sense of an emotional state or repressed trauma that we were experiencing, or joy. So that's what I hear, and can't help but liken when I hear you tell your story, which is really profound. And to have that at 9 years old, like I probably would have said the same thing as you. Like I probably would have been a little scared, but no, I want to stay and watch. Like, what's going to happen next? Like, what is this? Yeah,
exactly. And I do have to say, both of you, that this is what propelled me into the paranormal. This is what propelled me into my college classes and things like that in religion. And it has that in itself. I'm a full-blooded Native American. And that in itself also, I had the best of two worlds, I guess you might say, because I'm now into the Native religion and into my culture more than I've ever been into anything else in the world now. Mainly because what I saw and what I experienced in the pragmatic sense of religion, so to speak, is what drove me away from it. And basically, just like you were talking about, I was a part of the praise and worship teams in 3 different bands. I played keyboard and guitar and everything else like that. So I know exactly what you mean when you're setting the tone for what the people are going to be experiencing, the feel, the highness, the lowness, everything that transpired in those churches. of what basically I saw was almost a falsity, if you want to call it that, of reality to some people, because they took that hour of power, as they put it, and that's all they got. They got a high and then they got a low, because the low was with them when they walked out the door. Does that make any
That's
sense?
such an important component. Yes, that makes absolute sense. I remember we were told that after, a 3-day conference or a weekend revival, you're on the spiritual high. And when you go back home, you're going to feel really low. And I think neurochemically, that's like a normal come down from any elevated state of opiate release that's going on in the brain with our neurotransmitters. And so I think that come down, I was told, was a demonic attack. That the devil's really going to try to attack you now and derail your faith, because God did such amazing work in this setting. So we were warned of the low that you're talking about, and they use spiritual terms to describe it. But as an adult, and as a very spiritually curious skeptic, I've found that of course, that's just a natural neurochemical low that your brain might need to go through, because it can't stay in that heightened state all the time. Some people do. There are outliers that have brains that are just wired a little differently than most of us. But yeah, that makes a lot of sense what you're saying.
So in just a moment, Rick, we gotta move on to the next caller here shortly. But I do have a question. Are you open to the possibility that this could have been even the smallest chance, but a visual hallucination?
Not in the essence of what I saw. No, this was more on a spiritual level, and the intensity of what happened, and the essence of what happened after and during that experience has stayed with me since I was 9 years old. So no, I can't relate to that. No.
And okay. And you said you believe in the soul, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Do you know of any way we could test or investigate whether a soul exists or not in a reliable fashion?
That is one thing we talked about on our podcast too, was the fact that we've had guest appearances with other people that have come on. And that is one relative topic that we would love to look into also. As far as I know, I have no concept or any ideas as to whether or not there is such an experiment and or relative proof that there is a soul. But at the same time, we do have audio and visual of the time of death of people, and actually taking the weight of the individual at that time. And at the time of their death, it's been said that they've lost up to 2 to 3 grams of weight. And that was basically the soul or the spirit leaving the body.
So real quick, I know I'm familiar with the study you're referring to, and it was actually debunked. It's unfortunate.
Oh, okay.
So that part is not true. I wish I had the article handy. If anyone in the comments section right now remembers the study and can provide a link, that would be awesome. But Alice, did you have any final questions?
I wonder, Rick, if what you describe as soul, maybe for me and my verbiage, I might describe as energy, like the energy of being conscious. Like when I hear soul, for me, because I don't quite believe in souls, as in like a subjective spirit that lives on after our body dies, I do see evidence for energy and consciousness. So I wonder, I'm just curious, as a soul believer, do you think that maybe what you call soul and that essence leaving the body, do you think that there might be a possibility that it's what I call energy, just the energy of aliveness, of consciousness that just ceases to be? Do you think that, do you find any resonance with that, or common ground or possibility for that? I'm just curious.
I do. I truly believe that with you also, as far as, I don't get too caught up in the semantics of soul energy or anything like that. It is a collective unit of what we are in the essence of spirit, soul, and whatever else you want to name it. But energy is definitely something that we all were born with, and something that we all transfer one to another on a daily basis.
Yeah, no, we definitely affect each other's energy fields for sure.
I don't know why. Like, that's one thing I've always wondered, and perhaps I'm just lacking the knowledge in that area. But like, I know, for instance, like my laughter can be pretty contagious. Or when I'm
Or
goofy, at
yawns.
least I've been told that. But I also know my like anxiety is contagious because I've seen the effect it has on other people when I'm just anxious as hell. And I don't fully understand why that happens. And I wish there was a way to mitigate it. Like when I'm anxious, the only thing I can think of to do is to hide away from everybody because I don't want my how I'm feeling to affect their energy, for lack of a better word.
Well, I have a little theory on that
I
we can
think
put
we
a
have
pin
that
in.
ability as individuals, the psychosomatic, be able to, in fact, as I say sometimes, individuals upon what we are experiencing at the time that we have these feelings and this energy of negativity or positivity or neutralism even can affect anybody in the room.
Yeah.
So real quick, we do have to wrap up. Rick, what was the name of your podcast, just so the audience watching can look it up?
Name of our podcast is called Paranormal Analytical. My producer is Eddie Hill. They're from San Antonio, Texas. I'm in Kansas. And we have another gentleman that flies in with us now and then clear up in Pennsylvania. So we have quite a broad brand, so to speak. And we enjoy anybody that would love to be able to get on and talk with us. We do the same thing as you guys. We have a chat room. We have interaction between any and everybody that comes on the show.
Awesome. Well, Rick, thank you
That's
so
so
much for taking
cool.
the time to call in today.
Yeah, Rick, lovely chatting with
Well,
you.
I thank you, Ethan. All right, let's get back together, and I love talking with you guys. Thank you so much.
All right, sounds good. You have a good one.
You too.
Bye.
Night.
What'd you think of your first call?
I liked it. I like you, Rick. I love discussing these types of things, and I love hearing how everyone contextualizes things differently.
Right.
And yeah, it's fascinating. I mean, who isn't fascinated by this stuff? Like it's fascinating what the human mind, body, what the human experience is capable of.
Right. And I will say, I think you're a natural at this. You're killing it already.
Oh, thanks.